I stared at the text on my phone screen until the words blurred into a single meaningless shape. My son Daniel had typed them, each letter a small betrayal. "You're not coming on the cruise. My wife says it's just for family." I had written the check for their down payment 3 weeks earlier, $87,000 drained from the account my husband Tom and I had built over 43 years of marriage. Tom died 2 years ago, and that money represented every overtime shift he worked, every vacation we postponed, every dream we delayed. I sat in my kitchen, the same Formica table where Daniel had done his homework, where we'd celebrated birthdays, where Tom had held my hand during his final weeks. The evening light came through the window at that particular angle that always made me think of endings. The house was silent except for the refrigerator's hum and my own shallow breathing. My hands trembled as I held the phone, reading those words again and again, searching for some interpretation that would make them hurt less. Before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories reach. I set the phone down on the table and walked to the sink, filling a glass with water I didn't drink. My reflection in the window showed a 72-year-old woman with gray hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing Tom's old cardigan because it still smelled faintly like him. The cruise was supposed to be a celebration, a family trip to Alaska that I'd also agreed to fund. Another $12,000 charged to my credit card just yesterday afternoon. I'd been so excited, planning what to pack, imagining glaciers and whales and quality time with my son and his new wife. Ashley had married Daniel 8 months ago in a small ceremony where she'd been polite but distant. I'd attributed it to wedding stress. Now I understood it was simply her nature. She'd been calculating my usefulness from the beginning, measuring my worth in dollars while finding my presence inconvenient. The house Daniel and Ashley had chosen sat in a gated community called Riverside Estates, all manicured lawns and pretentious fountains. I remembered touring it with them in late August, watching Ashley's eyes gleam as she walked through the master bedroom with its vaulted ceilings and designer chandelier. The closet was larger than my first apartment. "This is perfect," she'd said, running her hand along the granite countertop in the kitchen, barely glancing at me standing in the doorway. Daniel had been quieter during the tour, uncomfortable perhaps, but he'd nodded along with everything Ashley said. When the realtor mentioned the down payment requirement, 20% of $435,000, Ashley had turned to me with that expectant expression she'd already perfected. Her smile was practiced, her voice honey-sweet. "Helen, didn't you mention you wanted to help us get started?" I'd felt Tom's wallet in my purse, the worn leather he'd carried for decades, and without thinking deeply enough, I'd said yes. The closing had happened last Friday. They'd moved in on Saturday with furniture I'd also helped purchase. The cruise was scheduled to depart this coming Friday morning at 7 o'clock from the port of Miami. I'd booked the tickets myself, using my credit card, arranging cabins and excursions. Ashley had requested specific things: a balcony cabin, the premium dining package, the glacier helicopter tour. Each addition increased the cost, but I'd agreed to everything because I wanted her to like me. I wanted to be included in my son's new life, and now, on Tuesday evening, I learned I wasn't family enough to join them. My phone buzzed again on the table, Daniel this time, calling instead of texting. I stared at his name on the screen, watching it ring 4 times before going to voicemail. Then a text appeared. "Mom, please understand. Ashley's parents will be there, and it's complicated with cabin arrangements. We'll do something special. Just us. Another time. Promise. Another time." The words tasted like ash in my mouth. I picked up Tom's reading glasses from the windowsill, a habit I couldn't break, even though he'd been gone for 2 years. He would have known what to do. He would have seen through Ashley from the beginning. That night, I barely slept, tossing in our bed, reaching for Tom in the darkness and finding only empty space. By 4 in the morning, I gave up and went to my laptop in the small office Tom had used for his accounting work. The desk still held his organizers, his pens, his reading light. I opened my banking portal and stared at the recent transactions, each one a small knife wound. The down payment to Riverside Title Company, $87,000 transferred on September 15th. The cruise deposit, $12,400 charged to my Visa on October 1st. The furniture from Ashley's preferred store, another $6,000 on October 3rd. The new washer and dryer set they'd needed, $2,000 more. The security system Ashley insisted was essential, $1,800. My savings account, once comfortable with Tom's life insurance and our retirement funds, now looked thin and vulnerable. I'd spent nearly $100,000 in 6 weeks. Tom's voice echoed in my memory from a conversation 3 years before he died. Never let anyone take advantage of your generosity, Helen. Not even family. Especially not family. I clicked through to the title company's website, then to the cruise line's customer service page. The sky outside slowly lightened from black to gray. I made coffee, Tom's special blend I still bought even though I drank it alone. By 6:30, I'd read through all the terms and conditions for both transactions. The house was closed, final, legally binding. But the cruise booking was under my name, my credit card, my control. At 8:30 sharp, I called Prestige Title Services first, needing to confirm what I already suspected. A woman named Margaret answered, her voice professionally cheerful. "Good morning, Prestige Title Services. How may I help you today?" I explained the situation carefully, keeping my voice steady, asking if there was any legal recourse to reverse or stop the funding. Margaret's tone shifted to sympathetic, but firm after listening to my situation. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry you're going through this. Unfortunately, the closing completed last Friday, and the funds have been dispersed to the seller. Once that disbursement happens, the transaction is legally binding and cannot be reversed." I thanked Margaret and disconnected, then immediately dialed the cruise line. A representative named Josh answered after 2 rings, his voice young and energetic. I explained that I needed to cancel the booking scheduled for Friday. "The booking is under your credit card, Mrs. Peterson," Josh said, typing sounds clicking in the background. "You're listed as the primary passenger and payment holder. Are you canceling the entire reservation for all 3 passengers?" I confirmed yes, all of it, everything. He processed the cancellation while I waited, my heart pounding. "Okay, Mrs. Peterson, I've canceled the booking. Due to the timing, 5 days before departure, you'll receive a 70% refund per our cancellation policy. That's $8,680 back to your credit card within 7 to 10 business days." I thanked him calmly, but inside something was shifting, a strange lightness replacing the heavy despair. The remaining $3,720 was an expensive lesson, but I was learning. I was finally learning. I spent Wednesday researching at my laptop, diving deep into property law, gift documentation, and family loans. The internet was both helpful and overwhelming. I discovered that without a written agreement, explicitly stating the down payment was a loan, my $87,000 qualified as a gift under IRS rules and state law. Legally, I had no claim to the house or any repayment. But morally, ethically, in every way that mattered to me, that house existed because of me, because of Tom's lifetime of work, because of our sacrifices. I printed out bank statements, the wire transfer confirmation, text messages where Ashley had called me the most generous mother-in-law ever, and such a blessing to our family. Documentation, evidence. Tom had been a meticulous accountant for 38 years before retiring, and I'd absorbed his habits over our decades together. By noon, I had a folder 2 inches thick with printed records. My friend Patricia called around 1 o'clock to check in, our usual Wednesday chat. I told her everything, the words spilling out in a rush. Patricia listened quietly, interjecting occasionally with sympathetic sounds. When I finished, she was silent for a long moment. Then she said, her voice firm, "Helen, you've always been too soft with that boy. Ever since he was little, you made excuses for him. And Tom, God rest his soul, he tried to set boundaries, but you undermined him every time. Remember when Daniel crashed that car at 19 and Tom wanted him to pay for the repairs himself? You secretly gave him the money." She wasn't wrong. I'd made excuses for Daniel his entire adult life, smoothing over his failures, funding his mistakes, protecting him from consequences. His first failed business venture, $20,000 lost. His credit card debt from his first marriage, $15,000 I'd paid off. The gap year he'd taken at 25 that turned into 3 years, during which I'd covered his rent. Tom had tried to stop me, tried to make me see what I was doing, but I'd always argued that parents help their children, that love means sacrifice. I'd confused enabling with love. Thursday morning arrived cold and gray, the October sky heavy with clouds threatening rain. I dressed carefully in the navy suit I'd worn to Tom's funeral, the one that made me feel professional and serious. I needed armor for what came next. My friend Patricia had recommended a real estate attorney named Richard Chen who practiced downtown. His office occupied the third floor of an old building with creaky wooden floors and tall windows. The waiting room smelled like leather and old books, comforting and serious. A receptionist led me to Richard's office, where he stood to greet me. A slim man in his 50s with silver-rimmed glasses and a firm handshake. I explained everything, laying out my documentation on his desk in organized stacks. Richard studied the papers carefully, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. His face revealed nothing as he read through text messages, bank statements, and transfer confirmations. Finally, after 20 minutes, he looked up and removed his glasses. "Mrs. Peterson," Richard began, his voice gentle but direct. "Legally speaking, you have very limited options regarding the house. Without a written loan agreement or promissory note, the courts will view this as a gift. The property is titled in your son and daughter-in-law's names, and the transaction is complete. However, you could potentially pursue a claim for unjust enrichment or promissory estoppel if you can prove they made specific, enforceable promises in exchange for your financial support. Did they promise anything in writing or in front of witnesses?" I thought back through conversations, through text messages. Nothing explicit about repayment. Nothing about my permanent place in their lives. Just general statements about gratitude and family. I shook my head. Richard continued, "The cruise situation is much simpler. You funded it, you canceled it. That's completely within your rights. They can't sue you for canceling a vacation you paid for." I asked about the cost of pursuing unjust enrichment claims. He quoted $15,000 minimum, with no guarantee of success. I left Richard Chen's office with a clearer understanding and a heavier heart. The law wouldn't help me recover my money, but at least I knew where I stood. I drove through downtown, past the park where Tom and I used to walk on Sunday mornings, past the restaurant where we'd celebrated our 40th anniversary. The city felt different now, or maybe I felt different moving through it. I stopped at the bank and asked to speak with Stephen, the manager who'd known Tom and me for 30 years. He welcomed me into his office with concern on his face. Patricia had called him, preparing him for my visit. I explained that I wanted to restructure my accounts, create better protections, perhaps establish a trust to prevent anyone from manipulating me again. Stephen listened carefully, nodding occasionally, then suggested I consult with an estate planning attorney. He recommended a woman named Gloria Mendez, whose office was nearby. I called from Stephen's office and made an appointment for the following week. Then I drove home, exhausted, but strangely determined. Thursday evening, I did something I hadn't done since Tom died. I drove past Daniel and Ashley's new house. Riverside Estates looked exactly as pretentious as I remembered, with its stone entrance columns and brass nameplate. Their house was on Magnolia Court, number 42, a 2-story colonial with white columns and black shutters. The for sale sign was gone from the lawn, replaced by their cars in the driveway. Daniel's Jeep and Ashley's new Lexus SUV that I'd co-signed for but hadn't paid for, thank God. The lawn already needed mowing, I noticed with petty satisfaction. Curtains were drawn across the front windows. A wreath hung on the front door, something expensive looking from the home decor store Ashley loved. I didn't stop the car. I didn't slow down conspicuously. I simply noted everything and drove on, my hands steady on the wheel. That evening, I started writing everything down in a spiral notebook. Every conversation I could remember, every promise they'd made, every dollar I'd spent. Tom's voice again, from years of marriage to an accountant. Document everything, Helen. Memory fades, but records don't. Friday morning, the cruise ship departed from Miami without my son and his wife aboard. I knew the exact time because I'd called the cruise line again Thursday evening, speaking with Josh again, verifying the cancellation had fully processed. "Yes, ma'am," he'd confirmed, "fully canceled as of Wednesday morning." The other passengers listed, Daniel Peterson and Ashley Peterson, were notified via email Wednesday at 11:43 a.m. regarding the cancellation. I thanked him and asked one more question. Did either of them call to ask about rebooking or paying for it themselves? Josh checked. No, ma'am. No contact from either passenger. That told me everything. If they truly wanted that family trip, wanted to include her parents, they could have paid for it themselves. But they'd expected me to fund it, and when I didn't, they simply let it go. Friday afternoon, my sister Diane called from Phoenix. Helen, what the hell is going on? Daniel's been calling me every hour. He's frantic, says you canceled their cruise and won't answer his calls. What happened? I told her everything, my voice steadier now after multiple retellings. Diane was quiet for a long moment after I finished. Then she laughed, a sharp, barking sound. Good. It's about damn time you stood up for yourself. Tom would be so proud right now. I wish he could see this. Her words broke something in me that I'd been holding carefully together since Tuesday evening. I cried for the first time since reading that text, deep sobs that shook my whole body. Diane stayed on the line, letting me cry, occasionally murmuring comforting words. When I finally caught my breath, she said, Helen, you listened to me. You did nothing wrong. Daniel is 41 years old. He's responsible for his own choices. You gave him a generous gift, and he thanked you by excluding you from your own vacation. That's not love. That's use. You're allowed to protect yourself. We talked for another hour, Diane sharing stories about times she'd watched Daniel manipulate me over the years. I bit my tongue because Tom asked me to let you handle your own son. But honey, this has been building for decades. You've been his safety net, his ATM, his excuse maker. Maybe this is the wake-up call he needs. The weekend passed in strange silence that felt both lonely and peaceful. I worked in Tom's garden on Saturday, pulling weeds that had grown thick during my distraction with Daniel's house hunting. The October air was crisp, the leaves on our maple tree turning brilliant red and gold. My hands remembered the rhythm of gardening. Pull, toss, the familiar ache building in my lower back, the satisfaction of cleared beds and neat edges. The roses needed deadheading before winter. The hostas should be cut back. The garden required attention I'd been neglecting. Neighbors waved as they walked past. Mrs. Chen from next door stopped to chat about the weather. Everything continued normally while my family fractured apart. I found comfort in that normalcy, in the steadiness of seasons and gardens and neighbors who didn't know about my private heartbreak. Saturday evening, I made Tom's favorite pot roast using his mother's recipe, then realized halfway through cooking that I'd prepared enough for 2 people again. Old habits. I packaged half for the freezer, writing the date on the container in black marker. Sunday evening, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Mom? Daniel's voice sounded ragged, desperate. Mom, please, we need to talk. Ashley's devastated. Her parents were so disappointed when we had to tell them the cruise was canceled. Why would you do this to us? I let the silence stretch long enough to make him uncomfortable. Then I said, my voice quiet but firm, I did what was necessary, Daniel. You sent me a text saying I wasn't family enough to join a vacation I paid for. You excluded me after I gave you $87,000 for your house. So I exercised my right to cancel a trip I was funding. If Ashley's parents were so important to include, perhaps they should have paid for the cruise themselves. Daniel started to sputter excuses. I continued, don't call again until you're ready to apologize for what you said and how you've treated me. Not a fake apology, a real one, with changed behavior to back it up. Then I hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt oddly calm, oddly powerful. Monday morning, I visited my bank again to meet with Stephen and discuss restructuring my accounts. He'd prepared several options over the weekend, bless him. We created a new savings account that required 2-factor authentication for any transfers over $5,000. We adjusted my checking account to flag any unusual activity. Stephen also provided contact information for Gloria Mendez, the estate planning attorney, confirming my appointment for Wednesday. Helen, Stephen said, walking me out. Tom always said you were stronger than you knew. I'm seeing that strength now. I'm sorry it took Daniel's betrayal to bring it out, but I'm glad you're protecting yourself. His words meant more than he knew. That afternoon, I did something that felt both petty and necessary. I drove past Daniel and Ashley's house again. This time I parked across the street, studying it carefully. The house that my money had purchased. the lawn still unmowed. A package sat on the front porch. Their cars were both gone. I sat there for 10 minutes, processing my feelings. Not regret about the gift, but anger about the ingratitude. Tuesday afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. My granddaughter Emily, Daniel's daughter from his first marriage, appeared at my door with tears streaming down her face. She was 19, studying nursing at the community college, working part-time at a bakery to cover her expenses. "Grandma," she said, hugging me tightly as soon as I opened the door. "Grandma, I'm so sorry about what Dad did. He told me everything, trying to make you sound unreasonable, but I know the truth. I know you paid for that house." We sat in my kitchen, the afternoon light golden and warm through the windows. I made us tea while Emily composed herself. She explained that she'd been excluded from the cruise too, though she hadn't been told until after the cancellation. "Ashley said it was for their immediate family," Emily said bitterly. "Like I don't count anymore since Dad remarried. Like 15 years of being his daughter just disappeared." She twisted her napkin. "Grandma, I overheard Dad on the phone last week. He was bragging to his friend Marcus about how you were finally being useful. Those were his exact words. Those words landed like physical blows, each syllable a small violence. Finally being useful. As if my worth was measured only by my financial contributions. As if 72 years of life, 43 years of marriage, 41 years of motherhood meant nothing except what I could provide monetarily." Emily reached across the table and took my hand. "Grandma, what you did, canceling that cruise, that took real courage. You set a boundary. Dad's been using you my whole life, and you finally said no. I'm proud of you." We sat together for a long time, drinking tea, sharing stories. Emily told me about her classes, her struggles with organic chemistry, her dreams of becoming a pediatric nurse. She told me about her strained relationship with Daniel since his remarriage, how Ashley had systematically cut her out of their lives. "I see you once a month if I'm lucky," Emily said. Ashley doesn't like reminders of Dad's first marriage. By the time she left at 6, we'd made plans for regular Sunday dinners. She hugged me tightly at the door. "I'm on your side, Grandma. Always." Wednesday morning, I met with Gloria Mendez in her office downtown. The space occupied a renovated Victorian house, all crown molding and original hardwood floors. Gloria was perhaps 50, with gray-streaked dark hair pulled into a neat bun and intelligent brown eyes behind stylish glasses. I laid out my situation more concisely now after multiple tellings, more confident in my narrative. Gloria listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes. When I finished, she leaned back in her leather chair and studied me carefully. "Mrs. Peterson, what do you want to achieve here? What's your goal?" I considered the question carefully, appreciating that she asked about my objectives rather than immediately offering solutions. "I want my son to understand that my love isn't a resource to be mined. I want boundaries that protect me from being used. And I want to ensure that what I have left, Tom's legacy and mine, goes to people who value me, not just my bank account." Gloria nodded slowly. "Then we'll create a comprehensive estate plan, a revocable living trust with specific terms." Gloria explained the process over the next hour. We'd establish a living trust with me as the trustee. My assets would transfer into the trust, protecting them from probate and providing clear distribution instructions. I could modify the trust at any time while I was alive and competent. "We'll also prepare a durable power of attorney and healthcare directive," Gloria continued. "You'll need to choose someone you trust absolutely to make decisions if you become incapacitated. Based on what you've told me, I wouldn't recommend your son for that role." I agreed immediately. "My granddaughter Emily," I said. "She's only 19, but she's more trustworthy than her father." Gloria made notes. She quoted her fees, $3,500 for the complete estate planning package. It seemed like a lot, but I'd just spent nearly $100,000 on Daniel. This money would actually protect me. I agreed immediately. We scheduled a follow-up appointment for the following week to review draft documents. As I left her office, I felt something shifting inside. Not happiness exactly, but empowerment. That evening, Emily called with troubling news. "Grandma, Ashley showed up at my mom's house today looking for you. She wanted Mom's phone number to reach you since you blocked their calls. Mom told her to leave, but Grandma, Ashley seemed desperate, and I heard her on the phone afterward when she didn't know I was still there. She was talking to someone about lawyers, about elder abuse, and undue influence. I think they're going to try to claim you're not mentally competent. My stomach dropped. I'd read about such cases online during my research, families challenging elderly people's decisions, claiming diminished capacity, fighting for control of assets. But I'd never imagined Daniel would go that far. Emily continued, I just wanted to warn you. I don't think they'll actually do it, but Ashley sounded serious. I thanked Emily and immediately called Gloria Mendez's emergency line. She returned my call within 20 minutes. Helen, this isn't uncommon, unfortunately. If they're suggesting you're incompetent, we need to proactively demonstrate otherwise. Can you come in Friday morning? I agreed immediately. Friday morning, Gloria had arranged for me to meet with a geriatric psychiatrist named Dr. Raymond Walsh. His office was in a medical building adjacent to the hospital where Tom had received his cancer treatments. The waiting room brought back difficult memories, but I pushed through them. Dr. Walsh was perhaps 60, with kind eyes and a gentle manner. He explained that he'd conduct a comprehensive cognitive assessment to document my mental competency. Mrs. Peterson, this is purely precautionary. Gloria briefed me on your situation. We're creating a record that you're of sound mind, making informed decisions about your own life and assets. The assessment took nearly 2 hours. Memory tests. He gave me lists of words to remember, then asked me to recall them later. Reasoning puzzles, patterns to complete, problems to solve. Current events questions. Who's the president? What's today's date? What major news stories have I followed recently? Math problems, following multi-step instructions, drawing clock faces showing specific times. It was mentally exhausting, but I performed well, I thought. Afterward, Dr. Walsh smiled warmly. Mrs. Peterson, you're sharp as a tack. Your cognitive function is excellent for any age, let alone 72. I'll prepare a formal evaluation documenting your complete mental competency, your decision-making capacity, and my professional opinion that you're fully capable of managing your own affairs. I thanked him, relief washing over me. Gloria had arranged everything perfectly. We met afterward in her office to debrief. This evaluation will cost you $800, Gloria explained, but it's worth every penny. If your son and daughter-in-law try to claim you're being manipulated or aren't of sound mind, we have expert testimony from a respected geriatric psychiatrist stating otherwise. It removes that weapon from their arsenal. I wrote the check immediately, grateful for Patricia's recommendation of Gloria. Now, Gloria continued, let's talk strategy. Based on what Emily overheard, they may approach you with apologies and promises, trying to reconcile. How do you want to handle that? I thought about Tom, about Emily, about my own dignity. I want accountability first. Real apologies with specifics. Real change demonstrated over time. Otherwise, nothing. Sunday dinner with Emily became our new tradition, something to anchor the week. She arrived at 5 with fresh bread from the bakery where she worked, the crust still warm. We cooked together in my kitchen, her energy and youth filling the quiet house with noise and life I hadn't realized I'd been missing. Over roasted chicken and vegetables, she told me about her classes. Anatomy was challenging but fascinating. Medical terminology required constant memorization. Patient simulation made her nervous but excited. She told me about a boy in her anatomy class named Marcus, who'd asked her to study together. Is he just interested in studying? I asked with a small smile. Emily blushed. I don't know, Grandma. Maybe. We laughed together. After dinner, as we washed dishes side by side, Emily said quietly, Dad called me last night. He wanted me to convince you to be reasonable. He said you were tearing the family apart. She handed me a plate to dry. I told him he did that himself when he chose Ashley's feelings over basic decency. He hung up on me. I reached for Emily's hand, squeezing it gently. Emily, I'm so sorry you're caught in the middle of this. You shouldn't have to choose sides between your father and your grandmother. She shook her head firmly. I'm not caught in anything, Grandma. I'm choosing. I choose you. I choose integrity and respect, and people who treat me like I matter. Those words meant more than she could possibly know. At 19, she had more wisdom than her 41-year-old father. We spent the rest of the evening watching old movies, sharing Tom's favorite snacks, talking about everything and nothing. When she left around 9, She hugged me tightly. Same time next week? I nodded, already looking forward to it. After she left, I sat in the quiet house and cried again. Not from sadness this time, but from gratitude. I'd lost a son, at least temporarily, but I'd rediscovered a granddaughter, and that relationship was proving more valuable than I'd ever imagined. Tom would have loved these Sunday dinners. The following Tuesday, Daniel appeared at my door unannounced. I saw him through the window before he knocked. He was alone, without Ashley, looking terrible. Unshaven, exhausted, wearing wrinkled clothes. I considered not answering, but avoidance solved nothing. I opened the door but didn't invite him inside. We stood on the porch, the October afternoon cool and crisp. The maple tree Tom had planted 30 years ago was fully red now, stunning against the blue sky. "Mom, please," Daniel started, his voice breaking. "Can we talk? Really talk?" I stepped fully onto the porch and closed the door behind me. We stood in the autumn afternoon, neighbors' children playing down the street, life continuing normally around our private confrontation. Daniel started speaking rapidly, the words tumbling out. "Ashley's sorry. I'm sorry. We were thoughtless and cruel. The cruise thing? We panicked when we saw the cancellation. We'd already told her parents about it and didn't know how to explain. But we never meant to permanently exclude you. It was a terrible misunderstanding." I watched him carefully. Every word felt rehearsed, performed, calculated to achieve a specific result. "Did Ashley tell you to come here and say this?" I asked quietly. Daniel's face flushed red. "She's in the car. She wanted to apologize too, but she thought you might receive it better if I came alone first." I looked past him to the street. Ashley's Lexus was parked at the curb, and I could see her in the driver's seat, phone in hand, probably scrolling through social media while Daniel did the difficult work. "Tell her to come here," I said. Daniel looked uncertain, then walked to the car. Ashley emerged reluctantly, dressed carefully in modest clothing, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back, the complete performance of contrition. She approached the porch with downcast eyes, every movement deliberate. "Helen, I'm so sorry," she began, her voice small and trembling. "I never meant to hurt you. The text message came out wrong." Daniel misunderstood what I was trying to say. I crossed my arms, watching her performance with detached interest. "What were you trying to say, Ashley?" She glanced at Daniel, who jumped in quickly. "The cabin arrangements were complicated. You were booked in a different cabin, and Ashley's parents wanted to split costs, so we thought—" I held up my hand, cutting him off mid-sentence. "Stop. Just stop. I paid for the entire cruise, $12,400, not a shared expense, not a split cost. My treat. I booked it, I paid for it, and you excluded me from what I funded." Silence settled heavily between us. A neighbor's dog barked somewhere down the street. A car drove past, slowly. Ashley and Daniel stood before me like children called to the principal's office, and I realized with sudden clarity that this was exactly the dynamic. They were children, irresponsible and self-centered, while I was the adult who'd enabled their behavior for too long. Finally, Ashley spoke, her voice smaller than before. "You're absolutely right. We were completely ungrateful. We took advantage of your generosity. We want to make it up to you. Maybe we could plan another trip? Something special, just the three of us?" I studied them both carefully. Daniel, my son, who'd inherited Tom's height and eyes, but none of his integrity or character. Ashley, who'd calculated my worth in dollars and found my presence inconvenient. This woman I'd tried so hard to welcome into our family. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice steady and calm. "First, you're going to write me a formal letter acknowledging specifically what you said and did. A real apology with details, not vague platitudes about misunderstandings. Second, you're going to apologize to Emily for excluding her too, for treating her like she doesn't count as family. Third, you're going to pay me back the cruise deposit I lost due to the cancellation, $3,720. Not because I need the money, but because you need to understand that actions have consequences, that using people has costs." Daniel started to protest, opening his mouth to argue. I continued before he could speak. "And fourth, you're going to give me space. No calls, no visits, no texts, until I decide I'm ready. If you do these 4 things, then maybe eventually we can start rebuilding something. But it will be on my terms, with boundaries I set. Do you understand? Ashley's face had shifted during my speech, anger flickering beneath the carefully constructed contrition. She caught herself, schooled her features, and nodded stiffly. Daniel looked between us, lost. They left without another word, walking to the car in silence. That evening, I felt lighter than I had in weeks, as if I'd been carrying a heavy weight that I'd finally set down. Emily called after 8, and I told her everything about Daniel and Ashley's visit. She laughed with delight. "Grandma, you're a complete badass. I wish I could have seen their faces when you gave them that list." I'd never been called a badass before in my life. I liked it. We talked for over an hour about boundaries, about self-respect, about refusing to accept crumbs of affection from people who should offer full meals of love. Over the next few days, life settled into a new rhythm that felt sustainable. I attended my book club on Thursday evening, where I'd been a member for 16 years. We were discussing Where the Crawdads Sing, and I lost myself in literary analysis, in the comfort of routine and friendship. Patricia knew about my situation with Daniel, and she watched me throughout the evening with approval and concern. After the meeting, she pulled me aside. "Helen, you're doing the right thing. Standing up for yourself. Tom would be so proud." Her words brought tears to my eyes. Friday morning, I worked in Tom's garden again, preparing it for winter. The roses needed their final feeding before dormancy. The hostas should be cut back now. The garden beds required mulch for protection. I worked steadily, my hands in the soil, my back aching pleasantly, my mind quiet. Gardening had always been meditative for me, a way to process difficult things without actively thinking about them. Tom and I had created this garden together over decades. He'd built the raised beds, installed the irrigation system, created the stone pathways. I'd chosen the plants, designed the layout, maintained everything. Now it was mine alone to tend, like everything else in my life. The metaphor wasn't lost on me. I was cutting back dead growth, preparing for dormancy, protecting what mattered for the spring that would eventually come. Mrs. Chen from next door came over mid-morning with coffee and muffins. We sat on the porch, talking about her grandchildren, about the neighborhood, about everything except my family drama. It was exactly what I needed. Normal conversation with someone who saw me as Helen, not as someone's mother or grandmother or ATM. The formal apology letter arrived via certified mail the following Monday morning. I had to sign for it, the postal worker handing me the thick envelope with its return address from Daniel and Ashley's new house. I waited until after lunch to open it, fortifying myself with tea first. Inside were 2 pages, single-spaced, typed on expensive stationery. Daniel had written it, his name signed at the bottom, with Ashley's signature beside his. The letter acknowledged the text message, the exclusion from the cruise, the thoughtlessness of their actions. It mentioned Ashley's regret and his own shame. It promised better behavior going forward, but reading it felt hollow, like someone had looked up sample apology letter online and filled in specific details. The words were technically correct, but emotionally empty. More damning, there was no mention of the $3,720 I'd demanded. No acknowledgement of Emily's exclusion, and no apology to her. They'd completed only 1/4 of my requirements, and apparently expected that to be sufficient. I filed the letter in my growing folder of documentation, then called Gloria to inform her. That afternoon, Gloria called me back after reviewing her notes. "Helen, the trust documents are ready for your review. Can you come in tomorrow?" I could. I spent Tuesday morning in her office reviewing every page carefully. Gloria walked me through each section, explaining the legal language, answering my questions. My estate would pass to Emily as primary beneficiary, with smaller bequests to charities Tom and I had supported over the years: the local animal shelter, the public library, the Cancer Research Foundation. Daniel would receive Tom's tools and our photo albums, memories instead of money, tangible reminders of the family he'd taken for granted. "Are you certain about this?" Gloria asked gently. "I want to make sure you're not making decisions from anger that you'll regret later." I shook my head. "I'm not angry anymore. I'm clear. Daniel proved that he values my money more than my presence. Emily proved the opposite. This allocation reflects those realities." Gloria nodded. satisfied with my reasoning. I signed every document, my hand steady, my conscience clear. Gloria notarized each page. "You've done the right thing, Helen," she said, as I prepared to leave. October ended and November arrived with cooler temperatures and shorter days. I established new routines, deliberately reclaiming my life from the shadow of Daniel's needs and Ashley's manipulations. I volunteered at the public library on Tuesday mornings, shelving books and helping elderly patrons navigate the computer system. The irony of being elderly myself while helping other elderly people wasn't lost on me. But at 72, I was relatively young and tech-savvy in that crowd. I joined a watercolor painting class at the senior center on Thursday afternoons, discovering I had modest talent for landscapes. Something about translating Tom's garden onto paper felt therapeutic and creative. Emily continued her Sunday visits, sometimes bringing classmates from school. My house filled with young voices and laughter and energy I hadn't realized I'd been missing. One evening, as we cleaned up after dinner, Emily said casually, "Dad asked me again to talk to you. He says you're being stubborn and unreasonable." I rinsed a plate carefully, considering my response. "What did you tell him?" She smiled, handing me another dish. "I told him you're being strong, not stubborn. There's a difference." I hugged her tightly, this granddaughter who understood what her father couldn't grasp. Emily had become my anchor, my reminder that family wasn't always about blood, but about respect and genuine affection. We spent the rest of the evening working on her anatomy homework together. She had a practical exam coming up on the skeletal system, and I quizzed her on bone names while she positioned the plastic skeleton she'd brought from school. "Grandma, how do you know all these medical terms?" she asked, impressed when I correctly pronounced sternocleidomastoid. I laughed. "Your grandfather had cancer for 18 months before he died." I learned more medical terminology than I ever wanted to know. The memory was bittersweet, painful, but also proof of my capability, my strength. Tom had needed me, and I'd risen to every challenge his illness presented. I could do the same now, I realized. I could face Daniel's betrayal and Ashley's manipulation with the same strength I'd shown during Tom's final months. The parallel was clear. Both situations required me to make difficult decisions, to prioritize what truly mattered, to refuse to be consumed by others' problems. November brought unexpected complications in the form of a phone call from an unknown number. I'd started answering unknown numbers again, having blocked Daniel and Ashley's phones specifically. The voice on the other end was Ashley's, calling from someone else's phone, catching me off guard. "Helen, it's Ashley. Please don't hang up." I considered disconnecting immediately, but decided to listen. Her voice sounded different this time, tired, less performed, more genuinely distressed. "I need to be completely honest with you about something. Daniel and I are having serious problems. Money problems. The house payment is much more than we expected. The mortgage, property taxes, HOA fees, utilities. And with the holidays coming, we're stretched incredibly thin. I was hoping—" She paused, and I knew what was coming before she said it. "I was hoping you might consider helping us with just 1 or 2 mortgage payments. Just to get us through until Daniel's year-end bonus comes in January. We'd pay you back, I promise." I laughed, the sound surprising us both. It wasn't a kind laugh. It was bitter and harsh and honest. "Ashley, let me make sure I understand correctly," I said slowly. "You're calling to ask for more money? After excluding me from a vacation I paid for? After writing an apology letter that ignored half of my requirements? After not repaying the cruise money I asked for?" Silence on her end. Then, "Helen, we're desperate. We might lose the house. I thought maybe you'd want to help Daniel keep his home." I took a deep breath, remembering Tom's voice, remembering Gloria's advice, remembering my own resolution to protect myself. "Ashley, I gave you $87,000 for your down payment. I'm not a bank. I'm not your backup plan. I'm not your emergency fund. You made choices about what you could afford, and now you're living with the consequences of those choices. That's called adulthood." She started crying, or performing crying. I genuinely couldn't tell anymore. The manipulation had layers I couldn't parse. "But Daniel's your son. Don't you care about his welfare?" Her question hung in the air between us. Did I care? Of course I cared. But caring and enabling were different things, I'd finally learned. I care about Daniel's welfare enough to refuse to enable his irresponsibility anymore, I said firmly. If you lose the house, it won't be because I didn't help enough. It will be because you bought more house than you could afford, made financial decisions without proper planning, and prioritized appearances over sustainability. Those are your choices, not my emergency to fix. I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking but my resolve firm. Tom's voice in my memory. Stand firm, Helen. Stand firm. I stood. That evening, I called Patricia and told her about the conversation. She listened, then said something that shifted my entire perspective. Helen, you know what this is about, don't you? It's not about helping Daniel. It's about control. As long as you're funding their life, they have power over you. Your guilt, your need to be a good mother, your fear of losing your son, they've been using those against you. By refusing to give more money, you're taking back your power. They can't manipulate what they can't control. Her words resonated deeply. This wasn't about money at all. It was about autonomy and dignity and refusing to be diminished by people who should value me most. The holidays approached with complicated feelings swirling through my mind and heart. Emily invited me to Thanksgiving at her mother's house. Mom would absolutely love to have you, Grandma. She says you're welcome any time, and she's always been grateful for how you treated her during the divorce. I accepted without hesitation. Emily's mother, Sandra, had always been kind and gracious to me, even after Daniel left her for another woman 12 years ago. I'd tried to maintain a relationship with her for Emily's sake, though Daniel had discouraged it, uncomfortable with his ex-wife and mother being friendly. Now I understood that his discomfort came from the same source as everything else. He wanted to control narratives, manage perceptions, prevent people from comparing notes. Thanksgiving Day arrived sunny and cold, one of those perfect November mornings. Sandra's house was modest but warm, filled with the smells of turkey and pie and home. Her husband Marcus was a quiet man who taught high school chemistry, and they'd created a stable, loving home. We ate around their dining table. Sandra, Marcus, Emily, her younger half-brother Tyler, who was 12, and me. Marcus said grace, thanking God for family and second chances and unexpected blessings. I felt both grateful and sad during that meal, missing Tom desperately, missing the son Daniel used to be before adulthood, and poor choices changed him. But I also felt welcomed and valued, included not because of my bank account, but because of genuine affection. After dinner, Sandra and I washed dishes together while the others watched football in the living room. Helen, Sandra said quietly, scrubbing a roasting pan. Emily told me what happened with Daniel and the cruise situation. I'm so sorry. I wish I could say I was surprised, but honestly, I'm not. Daniel has always had a selfish streak. It's why our marriage fell apart, ultimately. He wanted me to be grateful for his presence without him actually being present, if that makes sense. I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. Ashley brings out his worst qualities, Sandra continued. Or maybe she just enables what was always there. Either way, I'm glad you stood up for yourself. Emily tells me you've been amazing through all of this. Her words meant more than she knew. This woman whom my son had divorced, whom he'd hurt, was showing me more grace and support than my own child. December arrived with the first real snow of the season, soft flakes falling overnight and covering everything in white perfection. I woke to a transformed world, the kind of snow that made even ordinary things beautiful. I decorated my house modestly for Christmas, a small tree in the living room, some lights along the porch railing, Tom's favorite ornaments hung with care. Each ornament held memories. The glass snowflake from our trip to Colorado, the wooden Santa from his parents' collection, the handprint ornament Daniel made in kindergarten. I held that last one for a long time, remembering the little boy who'd made it with such pride, who'd insisted we hang it front and center. Where had that boy gone? What had happened to transform him into a man who could exclude his own mother from a family vacation? Emily helped me decorate one evening, stringing tinsel while telling me about her upcoming finals. Grandma, I'm really struggling with pharmacology. The drug names are absolutely impossible to remember. Metoprolol, atenolol, propranolol, they all sound the same. We studied together that evening, her textbook spread on my kitchen table, my reading glasses perched on my nose. I quizzed her on medications, their uses, their side effects, They're contraindications. She groaned and laughed and gradually improved. Around 9 o'clock, she closed the heavy textbook with a thud. "Grandma, can I ask you something personal?" I nodded, setting down my tea. "Do you think you'll ever forgive Dad? Like, really forgive him?" I considered the question carefully, wanting to give her an honest answer. "Emily, forgiveness isn't the same as reconciliation or restoration. I can forgive Daniel for his thoughtlessness, his weakness, his selfish choices. Forgiveness is about releasing my own anger and bitterness so it doesn't poison me. But that doesn't mean I trust him again. Trust has to be rebuilt through consistent actions over time, not through pretty words or single gestures. He hasn't done that work yet. Maybe he never will. But either way, I can forgive him while still protecting myself from being hurt again." Emily nodded slowly, processing my words. "That makes a lot of sense, Grandma. I think I needed to hear that for myself, too." We talked for another hour about forgiveness, about boundaries, about the complicated nature of family relationships. Christmas approached with both anticipation and dread. I bought gifts for Emily, textbooks she needed for next semester, a new stethoscope with her initials engraved, gift cards for gas and groceries to help with her student budget. I sent Christmas cards to old friends, to Tom's sister in Oregon, to neighbors who'd been kind throughout the year. I sent nothing to Daniel and Ashley. On December 20th, a package arrived at my door via UPS. Inside, wrapped in expensive paper with elaborate ribbons, was a cashmere scarf in a beautiful cream color. The gift tag read, "Mom, I love you. I'm so sorry for everything. Please call me. We can fix this. Love, Daniel." The scarf must have cost $200 based on the brand label, money they'd claimed they didn't have when Ashley begged for mortgage help, money that could have been applied to the $3,720 they owed me. I stood in my living room holding that expensive scarf, and suddenly the symbolism was overwhelming. This was who Daniel had become, someone who thought expensive gifts could substitute for genuine apology and changed behavior, someone who threw money at problems while refusing to do the hard work of actual accountability. I repackaged the scarf carefully that same afternoon, drove to the women's shelter downtown, and donated it along with a check for $500. The director thanked me warmly, explaining how much they needed quality items for the women staying there. "This scarf will mean the world to someone," she said, holding up the cream cashmere. I hoped so. I hoped someone would appreciate it, someone who needed softness and beauty in a difficult time. That evening, I wrote Daniel a letter, not angry or cruel, but painfully honest. "Daniel, your gift arrived today. It was expensive and beautiful and completely meaningless. Gifts mean nothing without changed behavior behind them. Apologies ring hollow without restitution and consistent follow-through. Until you truly understand what you've done, not just to me, but to Emily, to your own integrity, we have nothing meaningful to discuss. I hope someday you'll do the work required to become the man your father tried to teach you to be. But I can't wait indefinitely for that transformation. I'm moving forward with my life. You're welcome to join that life when you're ready to respect its boundaries." I mailed it the next morning. Christmas Day arrived quietly. I spent it with Emily at Sandra's house again, fully welcomed into their family celebration. They'd invited me warmly, including me in their traditions and rituals. We opened gifts around the tree, modest, thoughtful things that showed real attention and care. Emily squealed with delight over her new stethoscope, trying it out on everyone in the room. Tyler showed me his new telescope enthusiastically, explaining about different celestial objects he wanted to observe. Sandra gave me a beautiful framed photograph of Tom and me from Emily's childhood, all of us at the beach, laughing in the sunshine. I cried looking at it, remembering that day, that era, that version of our family before everything became complicated. That evening, as I drove home through quiet streets decorated with lights and lawn ornaments, I felt something unexpected settling into my chest. Not happiness exactly, but contentment. A sense of peace that surprised me. I'd survived. I'd stood firm. I'd protected my dignity and my resources without sacrificing my integrity. Tom would have been so proud, I thought. The new year waited ahead, full of unknown possibilities and potential challenges. I'd spent 72 years learning who I was, what I valued, what I would and wouldn't accept. Now finally, I knew myself fully, and I would never again apologize for demanding respect from people I'd sacrificed for setting boundaries with those who'd taken advantage of my generosity, for choosing my own dignity over their comfort. January arrived with bitter cold and crystalline skies. Emily stopped by one evening in mid-month, her expression troubled in a way that immediately concerned me. "Grandma, I need to tell you something about Dad and Ashley. I heard them arguing when I stopped by their house to pick up some old photos Mom wanted." She set down her tea carefully. "They're talking about selling the house. Like, seriously talking about it. Ashley wants to downsize immediately. Says they can't afford the mortgage payments anymore. Dad's resisting because he's embarrassed, but she's pushing really hard. Apparently they're already 3 months behind on payments. 3 months behind. They'd owned the house for only 6 months total. My $87,000 had bought them 6 months of pretending to afford a lifestyle beyond their means. I felt simultaneously vindicated and sad. Emily continued, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "There's more, Grandma. Ashley blamed you during the argument. She said if you hadn't turned everyone against them, her parents would have helped with their expenses. She actually said that, turned everyone against them, like you're some mastermind villain instead of just someone who refused to be used anymore." I shook my head slowly, not surprised, but disappointed. Ashley would never take responsibility for her own choices, apparently. Emily wasn't finished. "And Grandma, Dad mentioned something that really scared me. He used the word bankruptcy. He sounded terrified when he said it. I think things are even worse than they're admitting." We talked for a long time that evening about financial responsibility, about living within means, about the consequences of prioritizing appearance over reality. Emily was learning lessons from her father's mistakes that would serve her well throughout her life. After she left, I sat in my quiet house thinking about Daniel and Ashley's situation. Part of me, the mother part that had raised him, nursed his childhood illnesses, celebrated his achievements, wanted to help, wanted to fix things. But the stronger part, the part I'd developed over recent months, understood that helping now would only delay inevitable lessons. February brought bitter cold and an unexpected confrontation I hadn't anticipated. I was grocery shopping at Kroger, my regular Thursday morning routine, when I turned the corner from the cereal aisle and nearly collided with Ashley. We both froze, baskets in hand, caught in one of those awkward moments that happen in every small city. Her cart contained generic brands, clearance items, dented cans from the discount shelf, a stark contrast to the premium organic products she'd selected when I'd shopped with them before the house purchase. She looked older somehow, thinner, exhausted in a way that makeup couldn't hide. "Helen," she said quietly, neither of us moving. I nodded politely, preparing to simply move past her and continue my shopping. But she touched my arm lightly, stopping me. "Wait, please, just 1 minute." I paused, waiting. She took a breath, seeming to gather courage. "I know you hate me. You should. I was absolutely awful to you, manipulative and greedy and disrespectful. But I need you to know, we're losing the house. The bank started foreclosure proceedings last week. Daniel's falling apart completely. And I'm just..." Her voice cracked, real emotion finally visible on her face. I studied her carefully, this young woman who'd caused so much pain. Part of me wanted to feel satisfaction, wanted to gloat, wanted to say something cruel about reaping what you sow. But mostly I just felt tired and sad. Sad that it had come to this, sad that Daniel had chosen poorly, sad that expensive lessons had to be learned the hardest way. "Ashley, I'm sorry you're struggling," I said finally, "but these are consequences of your own choices. You excluded me, disrespected me, used me financially while rejecting me personally. You bought a house you couldn't afford, made decisions without proper planning, and now you're facing reality. That's not my responsibility to fix." She nodded, tears streaming down her face openly now, mascara smearing. I know that. And I'm not even asking you to fix this. I just wanted you to know that you were right about everything. I was greedy. I was manipulative. I thought your money would solve our problems, but we're terrible with finances. We always have been. The house was too expensive. The furniture, the cars, the lifestyle. We lived like we were rich when we're not. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve, a vulnerable gesture that seemed genuine for the first time since I'd met her. Daniel won't admit it, but we're probably headed for divorce too, Ashley continued, her voice barely above a whisper in the grocery store aisle. He resents me for what happened with you and Emily. He says I ruined his relationship with his mother, destroyed his family connections. And maybe I did, but he let me. He agreed to everything. He never stood up to me, never pushed back, never said maybe we should include you or treat Emily better. He went along with all of it, because it was easier than confronting me. I felt an unexpected stab of sympathy, quickly suppressed, but present nonetheless. This young woman was facing the collapse of her marriage, her home, her financial security, all consequences of choices she'd made. Yes, but painful nonetheless. Ashley, you need to figure out your own life, I said, not unkindly but firmly. That's not my responsibility or my problem to solve. I hope you find a way forward. I hope you learn from this and make better choices. But I can't help you, and more importantly, I won't help you. Not because I'm cruel, but because it wouldn't actually help in any meaningful way. You need to solve this yourselves. I pushed my cart past her and continued my shopping, my hands steady. That evening, I told Emily about the grocery store encounter during our usual phone call. She listened thoughtfully, asking questions, processing the information. Grandma, do you feel bad for them? I considered her question carefully, wanting to give an honest answer. I feel bad that they're suffering. I'm not happy about their pain, but I don't feel responsible for their suffering. And that's an important distinction. They created this situation through their own choices, through their own values and priorities. Natural consequences are teaching them lessons I couldn't teach them. It's sad, but necessary. Emily was quiet for a moment. Dad called me today too. He wants to move back home with you temporarily while they figure things out financially. He said just for a few months, until they can get back on their feet. I told him absolutely not, that you're not a safety net for his bad decisions anymore. I felt a surge of love for this young woman who protected me even from her own father. We talked for another hour about boundaries, about enabling versus helping, about the difference between compassion and foolishness. Over the following weeks in late February and early March, I heard updates through Emily about Daniel and Ashley's deteriorating situation. They'd listed the house as a short sale, hoping to avoid full foreclosure and the complete destruction of their credit. Ashley had moved back to Michigan to live with her parents, unable to bear the shame and stress of staying. Daniel was sleeping on a couch at his friend Marcus's apartment, having nowhere else to go. The life they'd built on the foundation of my $87,000 had completely crumbled, like a house built on sand being washed away by inevitable tides. I felt no satisfaction in their collapse, but I also felt no guilt. These were adult consequences for adult choices. I continued with my own life, watercolor class on Thursdays, library volunteering on Tuesdays, book club meetings, Sunday dinners with Emily. My social circle had expanded beyond Daniel and his needs. I'd made new friends, deepened old friendships, created a life that didn't revolve around managing his crises. Patricia remarked on the change one afternoon over coffee. Helen, you seem lighter somehow, younger even, like a weight's been lifted. She was right. I felt free in a way I hadn't in decades. March arrived with the first tentative promises of spring. Crocuses pushed through the frozen ground in Tom's garden, their purple and yellow blooms defiant against the cold. I spent more time outside, preparing beds for planting, pruning dead branches, feeding the soil. My watercolor class started meeting outdoors, when weather permitted, capturing the awakening landscape on paper. I painted Tom's garden repeatedly, each version slightly different, each one helping me process grief and change and growth. My instructor, a talented woman named Margaret Chen, encouraged me to enter a piece in the county fair's amateur art competition. I selected my best painting of the garden, roses in full bloom, the bench Tom built visible in the background, late afternoon light golden on everything. It felt personal and exposed to submit it, but Margaret insisted it was good enough. I mailed the entry form and tried not to think about it. Emily got accepted into a competitive nursing program at the State University with a full academic scholarship. We celebrated with dinner at her favorite Italian restaurant, toasting her success with sparkling water. "Grandma, I couldn't have done this without you," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "Not just the money you helped with, though that mattered, but the example you set this year. Standing up for yourself, refusing to be used, setting boundaries that taught me more than any class ever could. You showed me what self-respect looks like in action." I squeezed her hand back, my eyes filling with tears. This was my legacy, I realized. Not the money I'd saved or spent, but the lessons I'd finally learned and passed on. My granddaughter understood her own worth because she'd watched me claim mine. That was worth more than any inheritance. April brought an unexpected letter in my mailbox, this one from Daniel alone, handwritten on lined notebook paper. The envelope bore a return address I didn't recognize. His friend's apartment, presumably. Inside were 3 pages filled with his careful script, the handwriting I'd know anywhere. "Mom, I've been in therapy for 2 months now. Court-ordered, actually, part of the bankruptcy process and requirements. My therapist says I need to take accountability without expecting anything in return, without ulterior motives. So here it is, completely honest. I used you. I let Ashley use you. I treated you like a resource, like a bank, instead of like a person I love. I minimized your feelings and prioritized my own comfort and Ashley's demands over your dignity." The letter continued across all 3 pages, detailing specific incidents, acknowledging particular hurts, taking responsibility without excuses. I said terrible things. I made worse choices. I damaged our relationship, maybe beyond any possibility of repair. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect reconciliation or restoration. I just need you to know that I finally see what I did, and I'm genuinely, truly, deeply sorry. Not sorry because I want something. Not sorry because I need money or help. Just sorry because I finally understand how badly I hurt someone who only ever loved and supported me. I love you, Mom. I always have. I just completely forgot how to show it in any meaningful way. Your son, Daniel." I read the letter 3 times slowly, searching for manipulation, for hidden requests, for any sign of performance or calculated strategy. But it felt different from previous apologies. Simpler, more honest, more raw. I showed it to Emily during our Sunday dinner that week. She read it carefully, taking her time, then looked up with thoughtful eyes. "What are you going to do, Grandma?" I folded the letter back into its envelope carefully, creasing the edges. "Nothing yet," I said after thinking. "Words are easy to write, especially when you're in crisis and have lost everything. I need to see changed behavior sustained over time. Months at minimum, maybe years. I'll acknowledge I received his letter, let him know I read it. But rebuilding trust requires consistency and patience, not a single letter or gesture." Emily nodded slowly. "That's really wise, Grandma. You're protecting yourself while leaving the door open just a crack." "That seems exactly right." I called Gloria the next day, informing her about Daniel's letter and asking if it changed anything legally regarding my estate plan. "Not at all," Gloria said firmly. "Your trust stands exactly as written. However, Helen, if you want to leave the door open for future reconciliation while still protecting yourself now, we could add a codicil. It would allow you to modify beneficiaries later under specific conditions if Daniel demonstrates sustained change. That way, you're not committed either way. You can adjust if he earns back trust, but you're protected if he doesn't." I asked her to draft that codicil. It felt like the right balance between wisdom and hope, between protection and possibility. I wasn't slamming the door completely shut, but I wasn't throwing it open either. May brought warmer weather, blooming gardens, and a surprising phone call that shifted my perspective slightly. Sandra, Emily's mother, invited me to lunch at a quiet cafe downtown. We met on a Tuesday, ordering salads and iced tea, enjoying the spring sunshine through the cafe windows. Sandra got straight to the point, a quality I'd always appreciated about her. "Helen, I wanted to talk to you about Daniel. He's been coming to our house occasionally over the past month, spending time with Tyler. He's trying to rebuild his relationship with Emily too. And I have to tell you, he seems different, quieter, more thoughtful, more genuinely present. I think the therapy is actually working, or at least starting to work." I listened carefully, setting down my fork. Sandra continued, "I'm not saying you should forgive him or let him back into your life fully. That's completely your choice, and I support whatever you decide. I just thought you should know that he's making genuine efforts with other people he hurt. Emily's noticed too. She's being cautious, but she's giving him small chances. Coffee meetings once every couple weeks, brief conversations, nothing major, but something. I thanked Sandra for telling me, for caring enough to keep me informed. That evening, I called Emily directly, needing to hear from her about Daniel's efforts. "Why didn't you tell me you'd been meeting with your dad?" I asked, trying to keep any accusation from my tone. Emily sighed deeply. "I didn't want to pressure you or make you feel like I was taking his side against you, Grandma. I'm definitely not. But he's really trying, and I thought I owed him a chance to prove he's changed." He got a job at Home Depot in their plumbing department. He moved into a tiny studio apartment that's basically a glorified closet. He sold his Jeep and drives a 15-year-old Civic now. He's living completely differently than before. She paused, gathering thoughts. "And when we talk, he doesn't ask about you or try to manipulate me into convincing you of anything. He just listens to my life, asks about school and my boyfriend and my future plans, acts like a dad should act. It's weird, actually, because it's the dad I always wanted but rarely got." I absorbed this information carefully. "How do you feel about it all?" I asked. Emily was quiet for a long moment. Cautiously hopeful, I guess. He hurt me too when he chose Ashley over our relationship, when he let her exclude me from family events. But people can change, I think. Not always, not easily, but sometimes. We talked for another hour that evening about change and forgiveness and the complicated nature of family relationships. My granddaughter's wisdom and emotional intelligence continued to amaze me. She'd learned lessons her father was only now beginning to understand after 41 years. The conversation left me thoughtful, uncertain, hopeful in small ways. June brought my 73rd birthday, a milestone that felt significant somehow. Emily planned a small party, keeping it intimate and manageable. She invited Sandra and Marcus and Tyler, Patricia from my book club, Mrs. Chen from next door, and Margaret from my watercolor class. We gathered in my backyard on a perfect June afternoon where Tom's garden bloomed in full glory. Roses, peonies, lavender, daylilies, all the flowers he'd loved and we'd planted together. Emily had baked a lemon cake from scratch, my absolute favorite, with cream cheese frosting. As we ate cake and talked and laughed, I felt surrounded by people who genuinely valued me, who celebrated me without wanting anything in return except my company. Patricia gave me a beautiful leather journal with my initials embossed on the cover. "For your thoughts," she said with a knowing smile. "You've lived quite a story this past year." That night, alone in my quiet house after everyone had left, I opened Patricia's journal and started writing. Not about Daniel or Ashley or money or betrayal. About Tom, about our life together over 43 years, about the lessons I'd learned at 72 that I desperately wished I'd known at 30. About resilience and dignity and the critical difference between enabling and truly loving someone. About how setting boundaries was actually an act of love, both for myself and for the person whose poor behavior I refused to enable anymore. The words flowed easily, filling pages faster than I'd expected. I wrote about my granddaughter's wisdom, about friendships that sustained me, about discovering watercolor painting and volunteer work, and Sunday dinners that anchored my weeks. I wrote until midnight, my hand cramping, my heart full. Then I fell asleep in Tom's chair, the journal open on my lap, feeling more content than I had in years. July brought a carefully worded email from Daniel, sent to the new email address I'd created that only Emily had. The subject line simply read, "July check-in," and the message was brief and respectful. "Mom, I heard about your birthday from Emily. I hope it was wonderful and that you felt celebrated. You deserve that and so much more. I wanted to reach out for 2 specific reasons," Daniel's email continued. "First, to let you know that I've saved up the $3,720 I owe you from the cruise cancellation fee. It took me 5 months working at Home Depot and doing side jobs, but I have it now. I'd like to send you a cashier's check if you'll accept it. Second, to ask if maybe you'd be willing to meet for coffee sometime this fall. No pressure whatsoever, no expectations beyond conversation. Just a chance to talk face to face. I understand completely if you're not ready. I understand if you're never ready. But I wanted to ask and leave the door open. I love you always, Daniel. I stared at that email for a very long time, reading it repeatedly. $3,720, the exact amount I'd specified back in October. He'd remembered the precise figure. He'd saved it over 5 months. That suggested genuine effort and follow-through. I showed the email to Emily during our Sunday dinner. "What do you think?" I asked her. She considered carefully, chewing her pasta thoughtfully. "I think he's being genuine, Grandma. But you should only meet him if you actually want to, not because you feel obligated or guilty or pressured." I thought about Daniel's email for an entire week, praying about it though I wasn't particularly religious, talking it through with Patricia, who said, "Trust your gut, Helen," weighing my options carefully. Finally, I responded on the following Sunday evening. "Daniel, I'll accept the cashier's check as appropriate restitution for the cruise cancellation situation. Thank you for following through on that commitment. Regarding meeting for coffee, I'm willing, but not yet. Give me until September, another 2 months. Use that time to continue your therapy and your positive changes. If, in September, you're still living consistently with the person you say you want to be, then yes, we can meet and talk. Mom." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. His response came within 30 minutes. "Thank you so much. That's more than fair, more generous than I deserve. I'll check in again in September. I love you." The cashier's check arrived via certified mail 3 days later, made out for exactly $3,720. I deposited it immediately, then did something that felt symbolically important. I transferred that money into a separate savings account I'd opened specifically for Emily's continued education. Daniel's money, transformed into Emily's future. There was poetry in that, justice and hope combined. August brought reflection and consolidation of the changes I'd made over the past year. I met with Stephen at the bank to review my financial situation comprehensively. With the returned cruise money, Daniel's restitution payment, and my careful budgeting throughout the year, I'd actually increased my savings compared to before the house down payment. The initial panic about depleted resources had been premature and emotional. I was financially stable, even comfortable, with proper protections now in place. "Helen," Stephen said, reviewing my statements and accounts, "you've done remarkably well for yourself this year. Your accounts are healthy and growing. Your trust is properly funded and structured. You've protected yourself effectively while maintaining financial security. Tom would be very proud." I felt proud too, honestly. At 73 years old, I'd learned financial boundaries and self-protection strategies I should have established decades earlier, but better late than never. I attended my watercolor class religiously throughout August, my skills improving steadily under Margaret's patient instruction. My county fair submission won 3rd place in the amateur landscape division. Emily framed the ribbon for me, hanging it in my kitchen where I saw it every single morning. A daily reminder of new skills, new communities, new versions of myself I was still discovering. September arrived with cooler temperatures, leaves beginning their transformation, and the email I'd been both anticipating and dreading. Daniel wrote on September 1st, exactly when I'd told him to check back. "Mom, it's September. I've continued therapy weekly without missing a session. I'm still working at Home Depot. They actually promoted me to department supervisor last month. I'm living within my means for the first time in my adult life, paying my debts gradually, rebuilding relationships slowly and carefully. Emily can vouch for all of this if you want to verify anything. I'm still hoping we can meet for coffee. Your choice completely regarding when and where. I'll come to you, to your preferred location. No pressure, just presence. Let me know if you're willing. Love always, Daniel." I called Emily first before responding, needing her honest assessment. Is what he's saying true? Has he really been consistent? She confirmed everything without hesitation. "Grandma, he's been genuinely consistent for 8 solid months now. That's not a short-term performance or manipulation. I really think he's different, not perfect, but genuinely changed." I made my decision, my stomach fluttering with nerves. "Okay then, let's meet." I emailed Daniel back, suggesting the coffee shop near the library, neutral territory that felt safe, the following Saturday at 10 in the morning. He agreed immediately, gratefully. Saturday morning arrived sunny and mild, one of those perfect early September days. I dressed carefully, choosing comfortable clothes but taking care with my appearance, not to impress him, but to feel confident myself. I arrived at the coffee shop 5 minutes early, wanting to be settled and grounded before he arrived. But Daniel was already there, sitting at a corner table by the window, wearing his orange Home Depot work shirt and looking more nervous than I'd ever seen him. He stood immediately when he saw me entering, then hesitated awkwardly, clearly uncertain whether to hug me or shake my hand or simply sit. I made the decision, stepping forward for a brief, careful hug. We sat across from each other at the small table. He'd already ordered my drink, decaf coffee with cream, no sugar, and had it waiting at my spot. He'd remembered my preferences. We sat in silence for a long moment, both uncertain how to begin. Then Daniel spoke, his voice quiet and sincere. "Mom, thank you so much for coming. I genuinely didn't know if you would. I know I don't deserve this chance." I sipped my coffee, studying him carefully. He looked different, thinner, more tired, but also somehow more present and real than he'd been in years. For the next 2 hours, we talked carefully and honestly. Daniel explained his therapy insights, his growing recognition of destructive patterns, his understanding of how profoundly he'd failed me as a son. He didn't make excuses or minimize anything. He owned everything completely. "I used you," he said bluntly. "I treated you like an ATM machine with emotional manipulation buttons. I prioritized Ashley's demands over your dignity. I excluded you from events you funded. I said cruel things and made worse choices, and I damaged our relationship maybe beyond repair." He told me about the bankruptcy, finalized in June, about selling everything he and Ashley had accumulated during their brief marriage, about their divorce, processed quickly and with minimal drama since they'd been married less than 2 years and had no shared children, about his tiny studio apartment that cost $400 monthly, and his modest job that paid $15 hourly, and his completely restructured life. "I'm not asking to be welcomed back like nothing happened," Daniel continued. "I'm not asking you to forget or immediately trust me. I just want you to know that I finally, truly see you as a complete person who sacrificed everything for me, who loved me unconditionally, and who I treated absolutely terribly. I'm sorry, Mom. And I'm working every single day to become someone worthy of your love." I listened carefully to everything Daniel said, watching for signs of manipulation or performance, finding none that I could detect. He seemed genuinely different, humbled, aware, present in a way he hadn't been for years. Finally, after he'd finished speaking, I responded, "Daniel, I appreciate this conversation more than you probably know. I believe you're sincere right now. But trust rebuilds slowly, through consistent actions over extended time, not through single conversations or moments of crisis. I'm willing to stay in limited contact, maybe monthly coffee meetings like this one. We'll see how things develop over time, how you continue to show up. Can you accept that pace?" He nodded immediately, relief visible on his face. "Absolutely, Mom. That's honestly more than I hoped for or expected. Thank you." We finished our coffee, talking more easily about neutral topics. My watercolor class, his work at Home Depot, Emily's progress in her nursing program. When we parted in the parking lot, he hugged me again, this time less awkwardly. "Same time next month?" he asked hopefully. I agreed. Same time next month. I drove home feeling cautiously hopeful, carefully optimistic, protectively open. Time would tell if his changes were genuine and lasting. October brought a new rhythm to my relationship with Daniel. We met monthly at the coffee shop, brief 90-minute conversations that were carefully boundaried but increasingly comfortable. He told me about his work, about therapy insights, about his rebuilding relationship with Emily. He asked about my watercolor painting, my volunteer work at the library, my garden preparations for winter. He never asked for money. He never suggested moving back in or needing help. He simply showed up, present and respectful and consistent. Emily joined us occasionally, creating a tentative bridge between past hurt and potential future healing. Sandra told me privately that she'd noticed sustained changes in Daniel too. "He's different, Helen. More reliable, more honest, more present with Tyler when they spend time together." Patricia remained somewhat skeptical, but admitted grudgingly, "Maybe he's actually learned something this time." I remained cautiously hopeful, carefully guarded, protectively optimistic. The holiday season approached, and I made a decision that felt significant. I invited Daniel to Thanksgiving dinner at my house, along with Emily, Sandra, Marcus, and Tyler. A blended, complicated family gathering that acknowledged our messy history while remaining open to possible future healing. Daniel accepted gratefully. "Can I bring anything?" he asked. "Just yourself," I answered. "That's all I need from you right now." Thanksgiving Day arrived cold and crisp, with brilliant blue skies and golden light. My house filled with people I loved, people who'd supported me, people who'd learned and grown through difficult circumstances. Daniel arrived 30 minutes early, asking if he could help set up. We worked together in comfortable silence, occasionally talking about small things, the weather, the food, memories of Tom that we could finally share without pain overwhelming everything. Emily and Sandra arrived together, arms loaded with side dishes and desserts. Marcus and Tyler brought pies, apple and pumpkin, Tom's favorites. We gathered around my dining table, this unlikely constellation of family members. Marcus said grace, using similar words to the previous year, but with new layers of meaning. We thanked God for second chances, for growth through difficulty, for the courage to demand respect, and the grace to extend appropriate forgiveness. We thanked God for Emily's wisdom, for Sandra's kindness, for Tyler's joy, for Daniel's genuine efforts to change. As we ate, conversation flowed naturally around the table. Daniel and Tyler discussed astronomy and science. Emily told hilarious stories from her clinical rotations. Sandra and I planned our upcoming Christmas cookie baking day. It felt almost normal, this new configuration. Not perfect, not completely healed, but honest and forward-moving. After dinner, as we cleaned up together, Daniel asked to speak with me privately. We stepped onto the back porch, the November air sharp and clean against our faces. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket carefully. "Mom, I wanted to give you this. It's not much compared to everything, but it's something meaningful." Inside was a check for $5,000. "Daniel," I started to protest automatically. He held up his hand, stopping me gently. "Please, let me finish explaining. I can't repay the full $87,000. I probably never will be fully able to. But I saved this amount over the past 8 months through extra shifts and side work. It's a start toward restitution. More importantly, it represents my genuine commitment to making things right, even in small, incremental ways. I want you to have it. Do whatever feels right. Donate it, save it, spend it. Give it to Emily. I just need to know I'm actively trying to repair what I broke." I studied the check carefully, noting the deliberate amount, his neat signature, the date. "Daniel, this means more than you probably understand. Not because of the money itself, but because of what it represents about your priorities and commitments." I folded the check and put it in my pocket. We stood together in the cold afternoon, watching the sun set over Tom's garden, the bare branches creating intricate patterns against the orange sky. December brought unexpected peace settling into my life like soft snow. I attended my watercolor class's holiday exhibition, where 3 of my pieces displayed prominently. Daniel came to the opening reception, standing quietly in the back of the gallery, looking at my work with what appeared to be genuine admiration and pride. Emily brought her boyfriend, Jake, a kind young man studying mechanical engineering. My social circle had expanded significantly. Friends from the library, from the senior center, from book club, from watercolor class. Life felt genuinely full and purposeful in ways I hadn't experienced in years. Christmas Day, I hosted a gathering at my house. Smaller this time, just Emily, her boyfriend Jake, Daniel, and me. We exchanged modest, thoughtful gifts. I gave Daniel a framed photograph of him and Tom from his childhood, fishing together at the lake. He cried when he unwrapped it, touching the glass gently. "I'd completely forgotten about this day," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "Dad taught me how to cast properly that afternoon. I was 7 years old. I felt so proud when I finally did it right, and he smiled at me." We spent the afternoon looking through photo albums together, remembering Tom, sharing stories, laughing and crying. It wasn't perfect, but it was profoundly real and honest. January marked exactly 1 year since I'd received that devastating text message that changed everything. I sat at my kitchen table on the anniversary morning, Tom's coffee cup in my hand, thinking about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the pain, the strength I'd discovered, the boundaries I'd established, the healing that had slowly, carefully begun. I opened the leather journal Patricia had given me and wrote a long reflection. 1 year ago today, I learned that love without boundaries enables destruction rather than growth. I learned that generosity without mutual respect breeds exploitation and resentment. I learned that standing firm, even when it hurts desperately, preserves dignity and teaches essential lessons. I learned that I am fundamentally more than a resource, more than a wallet, more than someone's convenient solution to their self-created problems. I am Helen Peterson, 73 years old, widow of Thomas Peterson, mother of Daniel, grandmother of Emily. I am an artist, a gardener, a volunteer, a friend, a woman who finally learned to value herself as much as she values others. This extraordinarily difficult year taught me that it's never too late to change, to grow, to demand better, to protect yourself while remaining open to genuine healing. Tom would be proud of me. I am proud of myself. February brought another meeting with Gloria to review my estate plan in light of recent developments. Helen, given the sustained changes with Daniel over the past several months, do you want to modify anything in your trust documents? I considered carefully, weighing hope against wisdom, possibility against protection. Yes, I decided finally. Let's add Daniel back as a secondary beneficiary, but not equal to Emily. She remains the primary beneficiary and executor, but I want to acknowledge Daniel's genuine efforts. Maybe 20% of the estate, with specific conditions requiring him to maintain his therapy and demonstrate continued financial responsibility for at least 3 years after my death. Emily can serve as executor and verify compliance with those conditions before any distribution happens. Gloria drafted the modifications carefully, and we reviewed every word together. I signed the updated documents, then had them properly filed and notarized. I told Daniel about the change during our next monthly coffee meeting. His eyes filled with tears immediately. "Mom, I don't deserve this." I corrected him gently but firmly. "You're earning it, Daniel. You're actively earning it through consistent changed behavior. Keep earning it." He nodded, understanding the critical difference between entitlement and earning, between demanding and deserving. That conversation felt like genuine progress. March brought my garden back to life with familiar rhythms. Daniel helped me with the heavy work this year, turning compacted soil, moving large rocks, repairing sections of fence damaged over winter. We worked side by side, mostly silent but comfortable, occasionally talking about small things. "Mom," he said one afternoon while pulling weeds from the rose bed, "I've been thinking about my future, about eventually dating again, and maybe remarrying someday. Not soon, but eventually. And I wanted to promise you something important. I will never let anyone come between us again. My relationship with you is absolutely non-negotiable. Any woman I consider seriously will understand from the beginning that my mother is family, not an ATM machine. I learned that lesson the hardest way possible, and I won't forget it." I touched his shoulder gently, moved by his words. "That means everything to me, Daniel. Family is fundamentally about respect and genuine affection, not just shared blood." Emily joined us that afternoon, and we worked together in Tom's garden, 3 generations, carefully rebuilding trust, one pulled weed at a time. The roses Tom had planted decades ago bloomed early and abundantly, pink and fragrant and beautiful. I cut several for the kitchen table, their perfume filling the entire house. April marked my 74th birthday, another year of life and learning. Emily planned another backyard party, inviting the same core group as last year, plus several additions. My watercolor classmates, library volunteers, Daniel's manager from Home Depot who'd become his friend and mentor. My house and garden overflowed with people who genuinely valued me and my company. Daniel gave a brief speech, his voice shaking with emotion. "I want to publicly thank my mom for showing me what unconditional love actually means in practice. Not love without any boundaries, but love that holds people accountable while still leaving room for redemption and growth. She could have written me off forever, completely, and justifiably. Instead, she chose to give me a chance to prove I'd genuinely changed. That gift is absolutely priceless, and I don't take it for granted. People clapped warmly. I wiped my eyes, moved beyond words. Patricia leaned over and whispered, "You did good, Helen." "Tom's definitely smiling somewhere. So proud of you." I believed that completely. The evening ended with everyone gathered in the backyard, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of purple and gold and orange. Emily stood beside me, Daniel on my other side. My family, imperfect but genuinely healing. My life, rebuilt on foundations of dignity and strength and appropriate boundaries.